Yeah, I'm getting a sore throat from talking so much. After the cycle of the rites ceased turning, records of what happened to the Black Wagon of the Nightwings became inconclusive and contradictory. Some accounts suggest that the exiles of the Nightwings, who remained in the downside, continued to make use of the Black Wagon as their place of shelter and their means of travel. However, there is no record of what happened to the wagon's contents, such as the Book of Rites and the Beyond the Crystal, said to be haunted by the apparition Sandra the Unseen. The possibility is that when the lone minstrel took his leave, he took the Beyond the Crystal with him, for he was thus obliged. By this line of reasoning, however, the Black Wagon itself should have been taken also. Others remain skeptical that Beyond the Crystal ever existed, or rather, that the visions that it granted were anything other than the result of an active imagination or a fever dream. The bog dwellers of the southern bogs offer still another explanation, for they are familiar with binding enchantments. If there existed such an object in which the sister of the art had been expelled for more than 800 years, then the Enlightenment could have expired along with the light of the stars. What this could have meant for Sandra and the Beyonders is difficult to say for certain, other than it may have meant that they were finally released. In a way, I hope so, because being trapped for 800 years. She may be 800 years old, because plus, but I wonder what her age is when it was probably stopped in this crystal. Nevertheless, the fate of Sandra and the Beyond the Crystal remain unknown. Yet those exiles of the Nightwing, maybe. What if I actually read everything in the book? What if I talked to her every chance I got? Every time a rite ended, every time a situation happened, and I checked in on her, I would have probably known more. Oh, I feel so bad. She was always there, trapped and alone, for so long. I could have just been there to talk to her as every often I could. I know it's just a game, but the thought... People say that to me sometimes. It's just a game. But you know how some people in their Let's Plays, or when you see your friends or yourself playing, sometimes you can go, oh no. Or, scared, or you're happy for it. It still is a meaning to you. I should have definitely talked to her more often. After the cycle of the rites ceased turning, the lone minstrel bade the remaining Nightwings take the Black Wagon and seek their fortunes elsewhere in the downside. Their parting was heartfelt but brief. He remained there at the summit of Mount Alauda with Celeste, where the two of them would chronicle the final outcome of the cycle. Neither Tyreek nor Celeste were ever seen again. We know all this now through song attributed to them. Some claim these songs originated in the taverns of the Saran Union and merely were imbued with the weight of folklore. However, exiles liberated from the downside corroborated, unknown word to me, each other's claims at having met this duo that presided over the liberation rites. Another folk tale suggests these minstrels were heralds of the scribes, having fulfilled their obligations. They departed the world we know and rejoined their patrons. One of their famous songs described another, simpler outcome, that the two gave up their duties to the rites in favor of a life that they could share together. In any case, they are likely to remain the subject of such verse and of such song. For it was they who watched over the rites and ushered in our times. Now to see what happened to everyone else. In the aftermath of the final liberation rite, Orlek at last returned to his nation, one he had not seen in nearly 2 decades. He scarce recognized it. After all, it was in the midst of transformation, social and crucial upheaval, sparked by Wolfred Sandalwood's plan. When Orlek witnessed the people of the Commonwealth gathered in solitary under the black sky on the night the scribes returned, he looked on in silence for a time. Then the high-wing raiments descended, and a panic quickly spread amongst the gathered. A pitched battle erupted on the streets. It was chaos. Orlek observed all this, then took a step forward toward the fray. He knelt beside the closest injured man to him. He staunched the man's bleeding and set an injured leg. He pulled him to a safer corner of the street. Orlek's old abilities as a physician had not left him during all his years. Thus did he aid as many as he could throughout that night, until the danger passed. History would know him as the Demon Doctor, a term of endearment that stuck even after his horns started to recede. He lent his skill and service throughout the birth of the Sauron Union. The one he had called the Shadow of the False Nightlings was someone whom he thought of often. He knew he owed his freedom to him. Some people just need that. He felt betrayed, and I just wanted to give him the feeling that we are not hard-hearted. He still has friends. He just felt like he was lost. Maybe. Having witnessed the aftermath of Sandalwood's plan, Orlek understood at last what his former companion wanted. Years ago, they conceived a version of this plan. Now, Orlek found he wished Sandalwood could be present to witness the reality of it. Alone with his thoughts, Orlek would sometimes visit the memorial to the fallen leaders of the Commonwealth. Though, other than such appearances, and notwithstanding his duties as master physician of the state, Orlek led a very private life. Few would have guessed that he once was one of the most accomplished rites conductors in the history of the Nightwings. History, of course, shall ensure we shall not forget. Because... Wait, hold hard. Why is he so far down? Oh, yeah. The screen is not full screen, so it has the little bar that you can drag around at the top. That part is showing, which I cut out for the video, but it also pushes the rest of the screen below. So he's like really down there. After his liberation, Almer Oldheart was separated from his father, Dalbert, who had cast his son into the Shimmer Pool in his own place. The elderly Dalbert Oldheart, having achieved his goal of earning back his son's freedom, retired from the rites. By the time the cycle of the rites had reached its end, Dalbert's time had come as well. Almer did not learn of this until much later. Surely Dalbert would have wanted it this way. Would that he could have seen his son during this vital time. On the night of the scribe's return, Almer became inspired by what he saw happening around him. Inspired by the liberated exiles, the people of the Commonwealth demanded new leadership. It reminded him of his father's words and beliefs. Soon, Almer joined the fight, protecting others bodily as the situation escalated. By dawn's first light, it was over. Almer was exhausted by the cause he prevailed. From that point forward, he worked tirelessly and continued his father's work as a historian and curator of Kerr culture. He ended up providing an invaluable perspective during the formation of the Southern Union, as someone strongly connected both to the Kerrs and to his own kind. He found that the Oldheart lineage carried a great deal of respect and was able to bridge any cultural issues between his people and his people as they transitioned into modern times. One day, he was to have a meeting with a dignitary of the Eighth Word, the theologic sect believing that the 8 scribes were more than mortal. They were words divine. Eighth Word, okay. Which had grown in popularity since the birth of the Southern Union. Almer was stunned to find that this dignitary was none other than the one he knew as Ray, from their days spent in exile. Ray was overjoyed to see him, although Almer was unable to bring himself to understanding why. Eventually, of course, he did, and they since have ensured the Oldheart clan shall carry on in this new age. Not a day went by that Almer Oldheart did not think about his father, and give thanks to him, and speak to him, at morning and at night. Would that the stars yet shone, for surely Dalbert's would be there among them, smiling down at his son, and watching over him and his kin. Maybe I should follow Cry's example by not actually being like Cry, but not needing to talk as much. I mean, this is a dialogue-filled thing, so I'm having to talk a lot. I don't have to. I can just bring them up and let you guys read it. But boy, I'm finding out that my vocal cords, even by talking normally without trying to do a voice, is still straining. Alright. Because I'm curious. How are you doing? Barker Ashpaws. I would try to do the voice, but not right now. Barker Ashpaws never had much interest in returning to the Commonwealth, for he always found its bylaws to be stifling. So when the rites ended, he did not care at first. He soon grew very bored. The rites had given his life a certain sense of structure he had always needed. He missed the raw anticipation of it all. He decided to continue conducting the rites for the thrill of it. He bent some of the rules and replaced some of the objects, but it was close enough. His packmates and descendants, proved more than happy to participate, and thus they ran against each other back in Jomar Valley. Gradually, other exiles familiar with the rites, as well as those who had not heard of it at all, started to take an interest. They ended up giving Barker Ashpaws some healthy competition. His old feud with Ricky Greetail ceased meaning anything to him, and he forgot all about it amid his new pursuits. Ultimately, even Barker Ashpaws, who had led such a directionless existence to that point, found something of a calling through the rites. Whether he took the rites less seriously than any other exile of his time, or more, he was oft debated by those who watched him work. So mainly he's keeping the rites alive, or using the rites as a playground. I want to know about him.
Make a big out of us.
Once it became clear to Ignis that the rites were drawing to a close, he knew that it was time for him and his Templars to call it quits. But first, he and the Templars decided to celebrate, and that they did, for many, many nights. The rivalry did eventually subside. The exiles parted amicably and went their separate ways. He roamed the downside, then searching for some meaning in his life. Sometimes taking old jobs requiring his brute strength. He never remained alone for very long, and took on many lovers in his time. However, he sometimes thought about the one he had called Curlyhorns, and what became of her. Though his glory days as the most powerful conductor of the rites had long since passed, he always enjoyed the fearsome reputation he had cultivated at the time. I'm not sure how much information I can get from that, except for that he was alone or trying to find meaning. How about you?
Más spectacular.
I kind of like his music. It kind of reminds me of Castlevania. I only played like a few versions of Castlevania, and like I mentioned in a previous episode of some point, I'm wondering if I can get an emulator and play Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow. I feel like that one was one of the best, or at least one of my favorites. It had great music. And I like the style where every opponent had their own perk. Sure, not every one of them was wanted. Some of them were kind of weak or not very relevant to, say, myself, but maybe someone else. But it was interesting how everyone in the game had an ability that you could obtain. Yeah. When MacLeod Tinder Stuff realized the rites had ended, and that he no longer could return to the Commonwealth, though this through his ancient means, he was outraged. He cursed the scribes, spewing forth such a slew of blasphemy as to be very unbecoming of one of his high status and bearing. When at last he calmed himself, he focused all his energies on attempting to find another meaning of homecoming. He maintained regular contact with his wealthy family on the other side by messaging, and used their vast resources to explore other means of escape. He tried using an elaborate pulley system. He attempted to retrofit a flying black wagon with superior propulsion. So I guess he's smart in the sense of engineering. He tried an imp raft, a hot air balloon, even prayer. Nothing worked. There was only one way to escape the downside, and now it was gone. Tenderstuff bankrupt his family in these vain attempts. At last, such was his shame that he retreated to the teeming woods of Black Basin, to Cinderroot. There he yet wallows, complaining to his comrades of the chastity who still put up with him, either about his own misfortune or the latest news from the other side. Yeah, he was downright a poop. I was thinking of going, he seems nice. He just wants, I don't know. But then, after hearing a bit more about him, I didn't like him much. And hearing him at the end, what's going on with his head? Thinking that he was entitled or something and ruined his family, apparently. His family cared about him, so they used all their money to help him, try to help him. But to last no avail, and therefore he ruined his family. And probably still thinking about himself. Think about yourself up to an extent, but don't think only of yourself. I'm pretty sure you guys know that, though. Throughout her exile, Tamitha Thane was motivated by a single goal: to return to the Commonwealth and exact vengeance on her ancient enemies. When she realized the rites had ended, and that she would never see her mountain home again, she nonetheless remained determined to aid her people however possible. She had gathered certain information pertaining to the intentions of the Nightwings, who had formed a pact to regroup on the other side after their liberation. Other such reports exposed certain weaknesses to in the Commonwealth defenses, and revealed to the High Wing remnants the opportunity for a risky but potentially impactful strike. Though Tamitha could not participate in the assault, she nonetheless contributed to its success. She later learned her sisters in the High Wing remnants called out her name as a battle cry as they swooped down upon their enemies. Soon after the fall of the Commonwealth, Tamitha encountered her blood sister Pamitha, came to pay her a visit. Pamitha had hoped their people's victory on the other side would be cause for reconciliation. Tamitha was skeptical of her intentions. However, and lashed out at her. Tamitha made no attempt to elude the attack and was struck full on. This cost Tamitha the use of her right wing. Yet after she recovered, she shrugged the incident aside and said maybe they would call it even now. From that point on, the Blood Sisters kept in formal distance, but were cordial with each other. Knowing that the conflict on the other side had ended, Tamitha retreated to the crags of Black Basin and grew ever more distant. Those closest to her surmised that her inability to reconcile with her blood sister was at the heart of this, though for her part, Tamitha never once admitted to any such weakness. After the final liberation rite, Lendl refused to believe that the rites had truly ended. He would sit through night after consecutive night, staring into the blackness of the sky, awaiting any kind of sign that he might gain another chance of freedom. No such sign ever came. His fellow accusers started to express concerns for him, survival had become their top priority once liberty had slipped from their grasp. But Lendl dismissed them as weak fools. He insisted rather forcefully that that any evening now, the stars should shine for him again, and mark the way towards the inevitable freedom. He was, of course, mistaken. The others of his triumvirate were left with little choice but to abandon him. After that, the exile known as Lendl the Liar was never seen again. What's the word for this? Lost in mind, gone mad, I guess. However, there have been sightings of a bedraggled demon who wanders the downside and bears Lendl's cruel countenance, suggesting he yet lives. Did he turn into a demon, or whatever that means, his countenance? Ugh. Don't like this guy. All his life, Sir Deluge had fled from one danger only to find himself facing another. He had escaped the war-torn waters of the Sea Dominion. He had escaped the blood border of the Commonwealth. And now, he had escaped the rites. After the rites had ended, many exiles wrapped up in the ancient tests were crestfallen, as their last chances to return to their homes vanished, along with the stars above. But Deluge did not mind, for this outcome meant that, at last, there was no burden of responsibility weighed down on him. While most of his fellow exiles of the Pyre Hearts yet longed for the waters of the Sea Dominion, driven as ever by their impulses towards the conflict, Deluge settled down. With him remained one of his companions, one Lady Seagrass, who had taken a liking to him for some reason. He's a worm knight, duty-bound to serving Sir Deluge in the Pyre Hearts. Reportedly, they disappeared into the waters of the Worm Gulf, which may begin to explain the significant increase in the worm population observed in the vicinity. After the cycle of the rites has ceased, Witch Mildred returned to the Flagging Hands region, where she sealed herself within a pit of Melith. There, even her fellow exiles of the withdrawn allegedly grew unnerved after a time, and left her to her vile work. Sometime after, the pit of Melith erupted into flame. So intense was the conflagration that it could be seen all the way from Jamor Valley. Arson was suspected. Not sure what arson means, though the cause was never verified, and many bog dwellers in the region were forced to flee. The tempest blowing from the north finally quenched the flames. When at last the ashes settled and the grounds had cooled, the site of the fire was scarred beyond recognition. No trace of the witch Udmildre could not be found. As for the contents of the pit of Melith, which notably included a profane object thought to be the remains of Ixlesh, all of it was gone as well. Back in the Sorin Union, Udmelith repeated threats of the return of Ixlesh were thoroughly investigated, and no credence was found to any of her claims. There is one more account, which warrants mention. The Nightwings conduct the rites under the guidance of the reader. Little is known of him. However, some accounts of him begin to paint a picture. We know he was of common birth, just stout enough to make a simple farmer. The journey of the downside left him close to death. It was then that the Nightwings found him. They brought him from the brink. He showed them the path. He pressed onwards with the others. He had made a vow to help his friends be free. Thus did the cycle of the rites commence its final turns. With the final rite arrived, the reader's freedom was at stake. In the end, however, he remained in exile. From that point on, accounts of him diverge. It is said the voice which troubled him, he never heard again. Some say he chose to tend the downside land. Though whether it is true, only he knows. I mean, it's also good to be a farmer, because knowing how to grow food, one thing that people need to survive is food and water and air. And I'm pretty sure vitamins from the sun and stuff. So if you never got any sunlight and you're always underground or away from the sun, your body might need it. But food is definitely something that people need. And whether it's tasty food or dull food, it's something that's food is still needing. So knowing how to grow it, how to tend to it, and share that knowledge is great. It's something I feel like I want to do sometime. There's a lot of things that I want to do. Well, I say a lot, but so far in my mind. I want to be a good cook. I want to do some music. Learn some music. In various different instruments, not just one. And I guess I want to learn how to tend to growing some things. Someday, perhaps, that reader's own star shall emerge. Then it shall pierce the dark of night in all its brilliant glory. Until such time, and ever after, all of us give thanks.
Their journey began on a barren waste where the reader arrived, afraid and alone. When he arrived, the book of rites awakened the night wings and ignited the flame. They follow the stars bound together, strands in our brain till the end. We sing of the last of the night wings who, having broken the cycle, shall live on in song. Headwind prevailed and strode the path that his heart laid before him. He has found his way home. Captain Joe Dariel, mother to many a foundling, she has found her way home. Rookie Greentail has proved his worth and returned to his family by the grace of the scribes. They follow the stars bound together, strands untouched girl. Hears the scribes in the world all around her. They have guided her home.
Tears all the wise, ever faithful to the cause of the night wings. He remained to the end.
Sir Gilman the bold, ever in his quest, finding honor and glory, he has found his way home. Heaven the Thane, born on guilty wings, ever seeking forgiveness, she remained till the end. They follow the stars, bound together, strands in a braid till the end. Bound together, spirits tether, strands unbroken, scribes awoken.
The great mastermind, Wolfred Sandalwood, saw his plans turn to action. He remained till the end. The bog dweller Bertrude kept their foes at bay with her finest enchantments. She remained till the end. The reader at last made the night wings whole, having bound them together. He remained till the end. They follow the stars, bound together, strands in a braid till the end. They follow the stars, bound together, strands in a braid till the end. Now at the end, as we bid farewell and return to the stars, we shall find our way home. We shall find our way home. We shall find our way home.
That was beautiful. Supergiant Games. Bastion. I wasn't much as into Transistor myself. But this was a great game. Great story. Fun. Gameplay. Pretty heavy decisions in some points too. Many of those choices just changed how the story goes at the end. Make sure you have a time and you don't sore your throat. I like his art style as well. That's it. Pyre has finally ended. True Nightwing campaign mode unlocked. Oh. The thing is, I'm not sure if I want... You know what? If I can remember, I might do this as a live stream in the future when I actually get that up and running. If anything, remind me. If you come across this point, remind me. I can try this. So, this being the end, I want to thank you guys so much for stopping by. And until I see you guys again, have a great day, everyone.